welcome to Capital Link's Expert Talks webinar series, which features weekly interviews with leading executives from major shipping companies and other industry players. My name is George Novak, and I'm a Commercial Vice President for the Liberian Ship and Corporate Registry. I'm joined today by Dr. Anand Hiremath, the Chief Sustainability Officer of GMS, an international shipping company and the largest cash buyer of ships for recycling in the world. By way of background, Dr. Hiremath holds a master's degree in environmental engineering and a PhD from IIT Bombay, where he pioneered research on integrated risk assessment framework for best practices in ship recycling, and that has set new safety and environmental standards and responsibility for the industry. As Chief Sustainability Officer for GMS, Dr. Hiremath plays a pivotal role in transforming ship recycling practices, ensuring shipyards' compliance with the strict guidelines of the Hong Kong Convention for safe and environmental recycling of ships. And he leads the Sustainable Ship and Offshore Recycling Program, where he has personally overseen more than 100 inventory of hazardous materials surveys and successfully guided the recycling of over 130 end-of-life vessels. Now, before we actually get into the Hong Kong Convention, the topic that we're covering today in the business side specifically, Dr. Hiremath, can you please give us a little bit of background on yourself, on GMS, the main focus of GMS and where it stands in the industry today, and your current role there?
First of all, thank you so much, George, for the nice introduction, and to the Capital Link for providing this platform. Well, where to start? We are a 30-plus-year-old company. We are located in 13 countries currently and headquartered in Dubai. Our founder and CEO is Dr. Anil Sharma. As of now, we have done over 5,000 transactions. The transactions, I mean, we purchased and sold about 5,000 ships, including more than 1,100 as-is, where-is deals. We are known as the world's largest buyer of ships. Coming back to me, I'm a decade old in this company, currently working as a Chief Sustainability Officer of GMS. I look after all the sustainability initiatives which we, as a company, we do. Apart from this, I'm also a CEO of Sustainable Ship and Offshore Recycling Program, which is an independent vertical of GMS. What we do under SSORP is we help the ship owners to prepare an IHM in case the ship owner comes to us without an IHM. We do help them with IHM Part 1, 2, 3. We help the ship owners to select the right kind of yards for them to recycle the ships. Whenever a ship owner appoints us to supervise their ships after they are beached in a ship recycling yards, our dedicated team go there, ensure that all the hazardous wastes are identified, marked, and they have been removed safely. Apart from that, we ensure that we provide a weekly reports, monthly report to the ship owner, and we ensure the HKC compliance, the Hong Kong Convention, is implemented in true spirit as per the MOA requirements. I would like to add one more thing here is as an SSORP, we are the first and only program to be validated by Lloyd's Register Quality Assurance. We are the only program to measure the carbon footprint of the ships after they are beached in a ship recycling yard till the last block of the ship removed from the yards and re-rolled in a re-rolled mills. This is what we do. I have authored a book called Sustainable Ship and Offshore book, which we call it as a Green Handbook, which is available in any online platforms, the book platforms, including Amazon Kindle. Thank you, George.
Of course, yeah. Thank you so much for the background and introduction. You mentioned the Hong Kong Convention, and that's actually kind of our central topic for today. And as of the 26th of June of this year, 2025, the Hong Kong Convention went into effect, and it established a global standard for safe and environmental recycling of ships at the end of their life. So I actually had the honor of participating in one of GMS's three-part webinar series that launched on the 25th and 26th of June, right when the Hong Kong Convention was going into effect. And it covered three parts: the history and legacy of the Hong Kong Convention, developments in recycling countries, and the alignments between the Basel and the Hong Kong Convention, and the future alignment outlook moving forward for ship recycling. Now, moving towards the Hong Kong Convention, Dr. Hiremath, can you give me a little bit of background on the Hong Kong Convention, what was happening before 2009 when this was originally proposed, and what made the IMO make this decision, and what's GMS's role there?
Well, George, thank you for asking this interesting question. Right, most of the people might not be aware what was happening before the Hong Kong Convention was introduced in 2009. As you know, the ship recycling industry is almost 5 decade old. If you look at the ship recycling predominantly taking place in India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, these were the developing countries. Um, Before 2008, there was one regulation which was applicable for the ships or the ship recycling. It was called the Basel Convention. It is still applicable. Basel Convention came in the year 1992, and this was the only regulation which was kind of ratified by over 180 countries. So, what exactly this Basel Convention used to do is it is all about the transboundary movement of hazardous waste from one country to the another country with prior informed consent. We call it as a PIC. So, what exactly it does? If a ship wants to go for recycling from one country to another country, the exporting country need to give a prior informed consent to the importing country or to the countries which will fall be in between where the vessel might stay for bunkering or so. So this was a notification where it was required under the Basel that exporting and importing countries need to have this paperwork done. But where the problem was, as you know, the ships, the owner might be located in some other part of the country, whereas the ship might be flying a different flag. So the Basel Convention failed to understand that there is something called a flag state, and the rules and regulations are run and governed by the flag state. So when there was an exporting country, for example, a ship goes to a country for discharging some cargo, and a ship owner takes a call. Now I want to send this ship for recycling. So as per the Basel, the exporting country becomes the last port of departure, but the last port of departure might not have any idea that this vessel is going for recycling, and they might not be willing to work on any of the paperworks which is required for the prior informed consent. That's how the entire process of Basel failed to be apply to the ships. What happened with that? One more problem was the moment the ship owner decides to send a ship for recycling, at that moment the entire ship becomes a waste as per the Basel Convention. So for the recycling countries, on the other hand, they always treated ships as resources because more than 98% of the material is either recycled, refurbished, or reused. For them, they never insisted for any of the prior informed consent for ships to come for recycling. Due to this failure of Basel Convention, in the year 2004, ILO stood up and they prepared one more guideline called the complete and partial recycling of ships in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Turkey. That was just a guideline on how to do a safe recycling. When the application of Basel and ILO were very much limited for the ships, both Basel and ILO came to IMO back in 2005 saying that please take care of your ships because ships fall under IMO. All the regulations of the ships for the running ships, for the shipbuilding, for ship repair, everything is under IMO, and we want IMO to come up with unique program or a guideline which is specific for ship recycling. That's how, in the year 2009, IMO came up with a guideline called Safe and Environment Friendly Ship Recycling, which was inaugurated in Hong Kong, and that's how it became a Hong Kong Convention. Thanks, George.
Yeah, and you brought up a lot of good points there, but one of the major points that I want to reiterate is the responsibility and the responsibility of flag state. And as a representative of the Liberian Registry, I'm proud to say that we are signatory to this convention. And as a ship registry, LISCR was actually the first in the world to create a green ship recycling program to support ship owners in ensuring quality end of life inspections, ship recycling plan surveys and reviews, and proper review, of inventory of hazardous material documentation in order to obtain the individual ready for recycling certificate, which are mandatory in order to be in compliance with the Hong Kong Convention guidelines. And I'm also proud to note that none other than GMS has actually been our partner and our first client in this program since its launch. And they've not only been supporting this regulation, obviously, since 2009, as Dr. Hiremath just said, but they continue to walk the walk and demonstrate their commitment to the environmental sound recycling of ships and setting the example as the leading cash buyer in the world and the leading company in this space. But since moving a little bit more towards the logistics of the Hong Kong Convention, this has been in effect now for almost a month here. We're towards the end of July. This went into effect, like I mentioned earlier, 26th of June. So how have you seen in your day-to-day operations at GMS, how have you seen a change in ship disposal and recycling market? So specifically, what's happening in the market? Has it been ups and downs? What's the difference since the Hong Kong Convention has gone into effect?
Thank you for this interest. Thank you, George, for this interesting question. If you look at the time period in which the HKC is ratified, I mean, it came into force, it literally took 16 years. So back in 2015, the Indian yards started realizing going green and developing themselves with an HKC compliance. And as on today, we have about 110 ship recycling yards in India alone, which are compliant with HKC standards, right? Apart from that, recently, Bangladesh geared up very fast, and we have about 15 yards which are HKC compliant in Bangladesh. Pakistan expecting about a 9 ship recycling yards to get an HKC compliance very soon. What I want to say here is, from the recycling yard front, there was a much more preparation for the HKC, and I might not be wrong if I say that HKC might be the only IMO regulation which is already has done a lot of things voluntarily before it came into force, especially for the ship recycling countries. The real magic of HKC we could see at the ship recycling yards from 2015. That said, the way that the yard front, but now at the regulatory front, because the HKC has came in force in last 1 month, the recycling countries are still trying to cope up with what exact permissions they need to issue. For example, DASR, a document of authorization to conduct ship recycling. Now, Bangladesh, India, Indian authorities, they have set up their own ship recycling board. That's a good part of it. Like we have a dedicated ship recycling boards in India, Bangladesh, and as well as Pakistan, who will work as a one window solution or one window platform for issuing all permits. Um, in less than 2 months, DASR will be issued to ship recycling yards which are compliant with HKC in India, and how hopefully Bangladesh will follow the same thing. As a cash buyer, as a GMS, what we are going through currently is there is no clarity at the recycling countries what exactly they will be looking for, right? Without they providing us a DASR, it becomes difficult for us to work on the international ready for recycling certificate. And whether that recycling certificate is mandatory only for the flag, only for the states which have ratified HKC, or the states which are non-party to HKC, whether they also need to follow it. So there is a kind of an ambiguity in that aspect. But nevertheless, we understand the regulation very clearly. As a ship owner, we ensure that all of the ships, as a cash buyer, we ensure that all the ships which go for recycling have a proper IHM in place. 1, 2, 3. The ship owners do provide those things. That is first thing, because IHM is the heart of green recycling. Without the IHM, we cannot prove that the vessel has been recycled safely and environment friendly. So that's first thing. As a GMS, we are ensuring that we have an IHM. Um, to be frank, for the Bangladesh, it's almost 8 to 10 months already before the HKC came into force. They insisted that all the vessels must have an IHM. That's a good part. So for Bangladesh, last 10 months, all vessels going to Bangladesh have an IHM in place. In India, now it started that all the vessels going to India, Pakistan also have an onboard valid IHMs to start with. This is where we are as of now. It's just a 1 month old, and as you rightly said, glad we collaborated with the Liberian Registry, which has come with a very beautiful program to help the ship owners to make the life of the ship owners easy. And it's a good, very good program. I could say that with the help of this Liberian Registry ship recycling program, I'm sure the ship owners will be able to deliver their responsibilities of providing IRRC, valid IHM, and evaluating the SRPs and so on and so forth required for IRRC will be effectively implemented.
Yeah, and thank you. We're super excited and happy to have GMS as our partner moving forward and continuing the green recycling push for our entire fleet. But towards GMS specifically, you mentioned a little bit about your responsibility and GMS responsibility working with recycling yards. But how has this impacted the business of GMS and the business model? So the approach to the market. I know this has been something that we've been building towards, and like you said, some of the shipyards you've already worked with them to start to put the standards in place before this actually came into effect. But has there been a change in the actual business model in terms of what you look for when you're acquiring ships, what you look for when you're looking to recycle, the yards you're working with. What has changed, with the implementation of the Hong Kong Convention?
As I said, George, the changes mainly is that getting an IRRC has become a must for us. We need to say which flag the vessel is currently flying, whether it's a party to HKC or non-party to HKC, that we need to clearly look into it, because some of the flags might not issue an IRRC stating that they are not party to HKC. Whereas the ship recycling destinations like India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, they are party to HKC, and they might start immediately demanding an international ready for recycling certificate once they issue a DASR to their yards. Um, the business model as such remains the same, but there are several additions and the preparations which needs to be done, which might delay some process, because getting an IRRC from the flag, arranging the documentation, ensuring that we have an fixed destination for recycling well in advance the vessel leaves the last port. These are some of the technical changes, challenges we are facing currently, but I'm sure sooner or the later we will come with adequate solutions as soon as the recycling destinations will provide us a clear guidance on what they are looking for.
Hmm. And with all of these changes in the recycling space, and like you said, the new documentation that's needed, what's needed working with some of these recycling yards, have you seen a decline or even a growth of companies trying to enter or get involved in the ship recycling space? What does the competition or external companies trying to get involved in the space look like?
Currently, the ship recycling market is not that much lucrative, especially in the last 3 years. Irrespective of the recycling destination, the market was not much good for the recycling front. First of all, there were less number of ships, and second, the steel demand in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan were declining slowly, mainly because of geopolitical reasons. Um, that way, because the business has become more stringent now, yards have heavily invested to become green, HKC compliant. On the other hand, they were unable to buy ships because less number of ships and the declining steel market. Um, Looking at this, there are not much new players entering into the ship recycling. To be frank, we have the recyclers which predominantly doing recycling, from ages. We still have them. There is no as much change, I could say, from the recycling front entering the new people entering this market. There might be few experiments being made, trying to be made by different owners, trying to convert their existing method of recycling to some other alternative. That chances are high, but as such, there are no new entries to this.
And like you said, with all the regulations that are being put in place, some of them we've kind of built towards over the last 15 years or so. But do you think the Hong Kong Convention provides enough clarity with regard to ship recycling regulations, or what do you think is the biggest gap or misalignment that's in the Hong Kong Convention that needs to be remedied in the future?
Well, I could see the HKC when it was crafted, right, back in 2009. There were a lot of factors were taken into consideration. When HKC guidelines were made, in order to avoid repetition of ILO and Basel requirements, those requirements were not included in HKC. It doesn't mean there are gaps in the HKC. They just like they don't wanted to rewrite the same thing. Having said this, back in 2025, the HKC has brought a real change in the ship recycling yard, to be frank, right? The infrastructure which was missing, it has the documentation which was missing, it was there. The training to the workers which was there, not there much, it was there. And again, it depends on the interpretation of what exactly you want to see as an HKC implementation, right? Um, so if you look at an example of a basic ISO 30,000 is been designed only for ship recycling management system. So if you implement that particular ISO 30,000 in true spirit, then it might be HKC might not be even required if you implement ISO 14,000 in a true spirit. So in whichever might be the regulation looks only good when you implement it 100%, right? So that is one part of it. The second part of it is like now HKC is in force when the same Basel and ILO were coming back and saying you must have a own IMO governed regulation for HKC, IMO governed regulation for ships. Now coming back again to square one and asking that where is Basel Convention, right? The convention which terribly failed to apply for ships for recycling. Now people coming back and questioning where is the place for Basel, instead of trying to equate the Basel with HKC or trying to fill those bridge gaps. This is where I think it's been lacking. We are currently in 2025 and we are still looking for the 1992 Basel Convention, which failed terribly to apply to ships. That's the one gap I see, which I'm sure the regulatory bodies will take care sooner or later.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't agree more. It looks like a lot of people are trying to find slight misalignments in the verbiage or the language between the two conventions instead of just understanding that, this was written with the best intentions in mind, and we're trying to cover as many different areas as we can. But I'm sure the, conference of parties and future meetings that they're going to have, hopefully they get a little bit more ironed out in terms of closing some of what people perceive to be as loopholes. But I think it's a fantastic step in the correct direction. And as we're coming up on time here, I kind of want to look towards the future and either make some predictions or what we think is going to happen. But normally the market takes a little bit of time to catch up with regulations as they come into force and as they're coming into effect in the industry. But where do you see the market a year from now, with the Hong Kong Convention being in place for an entire year next summer? 12 months or 11 months, I guess, from now, where do you see this market and any changes that you see large scale in the ship recycling market?
Well, George, if you go by the uh, with the theory which has come up by the BIMCO, we are expecting about 15,000 ships coming for recycling by 2032. So we are in 2025. We have 7 years left. If you divide the 15,000 by seven, we expect at least more than 1,000 ships to come for recycling as of now, right? So looking at that market, irrespective of the value of that particular steel values, which will vary depending on international steel market, but number of ships are going to increase, that is for sure. If you look at even the new building books of 2009, 2010 and all, there's a huge number of ships built in that period. So currently, due to the geopolitical situations, those ships are being used to the full extent because freight rate um, uh, uh, is fantastic from last 3 years. So the number of ships coming for recycling will increase for sure, because recycling is an inevitable activity. On the other hand, if you look at the steel market, that is dynamic. Nobody has a control over that. A number of ships will come for, and there is a capacity in place in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan to accommodate these ships for recycling. That is one thing that I could see. And on the regulatory front, I see, as I agree with you, that any regulation, when it comes in, it will take some buffer time for the people to get adjusted to it. That will be there. And as a GMS, we are committed to do a green recycling as per HKC standards for our own ships or for all the demo ships. And that's how we started with Liberian Registry to walk the talk. And apart from that, as an SSORP, irrespective of HKC or irrespective of the market conditions, we have been very much into our ESG practices. We can, for an example, as on today, we have trained about 10,500 workers in India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan together. And we believe training is something which has to be done periodically, continuously, and HKC has to be implemented irrespective of the recycling method. I'm not talking about the ship recycling or beaching method or a slipway method or a landing method or a dry dock. When HKC is in force, or when HKC is in there, we need to ensure that the workers are safe, the workers don't get exposed to the hazardous waste, the environment is safe. That's what the ultimate aim of HKC is, safe and environment friendly ship recycling. One more point which I wanted to bring in here is HKC, as we both understand, is HKC is not only about ship recycling. It talks about shipbuilding, it talks about ship repair, because it talks about IHM from the shipbuilding phase itself. So HKC covers an entire life cycle of a ship, from building to repair to dry dock to operations and at the end of life. So I believe HKC is something which covers all phases of life of ship. Plus, it's a beginning, and everybody needs to, all the stakeholders needs to implement HKC in true spirit, so that ultimately the safe and environment friendly ship recycling becomes true.
Yeah, extremely well put. I think the true spirit of what the Hong Kong Convention is about is really what we need to take away from this. And that isn't just this recycling of ships. That's the entire life of the ship from, when it's built all the way through. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's, you said it, you called it an inevitability of vessels having to be recycled, and the number 15,000 coming from BIMCO's study is a pretty big number. So I'm glad we're active in this space and moving in the right direction. And I couldn't be more excited to be partnered with GMS in the ship recycling space. So Dr. Hiremath, thank you so much for joining me today. And on behalf of the Liberian Registry and on behalf of GMS, I would also like to thank Capital Link for allowing us to use their forum to discuss Hong Kong Convention and the future of ship recycling. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, George, and the Capital Link.